Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Coffman. Welcome to our 38th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We're holding by Parshas Korach. It's a loaded parsha about the story of Korach and going out against Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron himself. Really, it's more about Korach wanting the kahuna, wanting the high priesthood, not necessarily going against Moshe, but certainly going against Aaron, so that we're going to see exactly why he did that and what was behind it and everything else. So the beginning of the parsha, it starts chapter 16. It says, Korach, son of Yitzchak, son of Kahas, son of Levi, separated himself with Datan and Aviram, son of Eliav, and On, son of Pelez, the offspring of Reuven. He stood before Moshe with 250 men from the children of Israel, leaders of the assembly, those summoned for meeting, men of renown. And what did they do? They gathered together against Moshe and against Aaron and said to them, it's too much for you, for the entire assembly, all of them are holy, and Hashem is among them. Why do you exalt yourself over the congregation of Hashem? So that is chapter 16, verses 1 to 3. So here we have, as the Torah says, Korach separates himself, right? That's significant. We'll see. And he goes against Moshe and Aaron, and he takes 250 men of renown, meaning they're great people. He didn't just take, anybody. He took 250 great men, and through these 250 great men, they went against, they went against Moshe and Aaron. So we have to see what's going on here exactly. The first thing is that the Torah says Korach, the son of Yitzhak, son of Kahas, the son of Levi, separates himself. Right? So what did he do? He went against Moshe and Aaron. He separated himself. And that's what is important to understand about machloikis. Machloikis means, two people have an argument, or that's really what it is. You need, they say you need two people to tango. Right? You can't have, one guy's going to have an argument with someone else and the other person doesn't answer, doesn't say anything. Well, that's not much of an argument, per se. But here, he gathered people around him. He gathered great people, around him that went against Aaron and Moshe. So what's really the background? Why did he really go against them? So he saw through really a foreign prophecy. Right, he saw in the future that Shmuel Hanavi, Samuel the prophet, is going to come out of him. That's pretty good, that's pretty good lineage. So he felt, well, I got this great person coming out of me, and as the Medrash says, he was as great as Aaron. So, I'll have to clarify that as well. But that being the case, he himself wanted the priesthood. He wanted to be the high priest. After all, he's got good lineage. He's as great as Aaron. So why does Moshe give it to Aaron? We know that Moshe is really the first king. Even though it says over here that he went against Moshe and against Aaron. If he would have wanted to be the king, right? If he really wanted to be in charge, they would have killed him. It would have been obvious. So he didn't do that. If he would have done that, that's it. Just bury him. He's finished. So he came out against Aaron, and he convinced 250 great people to go against Aaron as well. So now, let's say he has this great lineage. Let's say, even for argument's sake, that according to the Medrash, he's as great as Aaron. Now we have to remember that Korach has seen the miracles in Egypt. He's in the desert, so he's experienced miracles in the desert, right? Through the man, etc. So, if he's seen all these miracles, and he understands God's the one running the show, how in the world can he disagree with Moshe and Aaron? How can he come against Moshe and Aaron? I mean, at face value, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because the reality is that, how do we know, as the Torah says, that Moshe is the humblest of all men, right? The Torah says that, and he's the greatest of all the prophets. So if you look at the 13 principles of faith of Maimonides, of the Rambam, it says that Moshe is the father of all prophets. So anyone who's a prophet cannot go against what Moshe said. Because the Torah says in Deuteronomy, you can't add or subtract to the Torah. And Moshe did not do that. Moshe was a scribe. God said, Moshe wrote it. That's it. It might not be in the exact order that it occurred. You know, there are things that are written down but happened earlier. So it's not chronologically in order, and that's why Rashi in many places in the Torah says, Ein muktam or muchar b'Torah. There's nothing before, nothing after, meaning that what happened and what was written down is true. That there's no question. What the issue is sometimes what you have is the Torah will be out of place. Or seemingly what's written is not written in the right order. So, you know, when you speak about the sin of the golden calf, where it's written is not where it happened. It's not when it happened. It happened earlier. It happened much earlier. Right? But it was written down. It was written down later. You know, at a later time, even though it happened earlier. So the commentaries are bothered by this. Why is that? You know, if the Torah is a history book, so tell the story, you know, the way it happened, in order. Why tell me that, you know, you have this part that comes much earlier, but it's written later? The commentaries are bothered by that. According to Rashi, you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem because it's not written in order. Again, he's not denying that it's all true, but Moshe just didn't write it down exactly when it happened. That's one thing. So here, he sees the miracles. What happened in Egypt, coming out. The miracles in the desert. So it boggles the mind how we could have got involved and taken so many people with it. Now, even if we say he's as great as Moshe, keep in mind, how do we know? We mentioned that Moshe is the greatest of all the prophets. Moshe, when he spoke to God, didn't lose any of his faculties, didn't lose any of his senses. It was like a person speaking to his friend. Again, hard to imagine what this is, because many times the Torah says, "Vayidber Hashem el Moshe lemor," that God spoke to Moshe. It doesn't say what the manifestation was. So it's a little bit hard to understand how Moshe communicated exactly. Or what he heard exactly. That's the whole question. But God speaks to him and tells him, okay, tell the Jewish people this. And he speaks to Aaron, and he tells Aaron, tell the Jewish, sometimes he'll speak to Moshe together with Aaron, sometimes separately, right? Seemingly showing that they're not only on the same page, but they're basically equal, even though it seems Moshe is greater. Moshe reached the 48th level of understanding. Nonetheless, there's a whole discussion about that as well. See, so much to talk about, but we're not gonna, we're gonna try and stay on topic a little bit here, a little bit focused. So God speaks to him, and Moshe gives it over. So now again, Moshe cannot change what God says. Moshe is a scribe. Even though there are a few things that Moshe did on his own that God agreed, but in general, he's a scribe. That's it. Now, how do we know that Moshe is the father of all prophets? How do we know his prophecy, his prophecy is greater than everyone else? Well, first of all, God made him his trusted prophet. So Moshe's credibility, who does it come from? It comes from God himself. Now, because it comes from God himself, then anyone who comes along and contradicts what Moshe said, or goes against what Moshe said, even if they do miracles, doesn't matter. They're called a false prophet. They have to die, right? They're killed. So now let's analyze that for a second. What's the problem? The problem is that the Torah says you have a prophet, or seemingly a prophet, in your days, and even if he does miracles, etc., you kill him. What's the rationale? So even if he does miracles, he cannot, he can use certain names of God or other things to do miracles with, but it doesn't prove anything. And he can certainly be a false prophet. And if he is a false prophet, so that's dangerous. Because if he comes out and says, well, we have to change the Torah, and this is not like this, it's really like this, and I had a vision, and blah, 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 we don't believe him. We don't believe him. The reason we don't believe him is because you cannot be a prophet and contradict what Moshe says. Right? It's an impossibility. Because remember, Moshe gets his stamp of approval, so to speak, from God himself. So if God makes him the father of all prophets, and he says, tell this to the Jewish people, etc., etc., Moshe does not change anything. There's a question in the last 8 verses. Who wrote it? Because it talks about Moshe's death. So some say Moshe's trusted student, Joshua wrote it. Others say Moshe wrote it in tears. Right? Understanding that he's going to die. Be that as it may, Moshe cannot contradict anything that God says. Right? God tells him to do this, write this, etc. And that's it. That's what he has to do. So nobody, and I repeat, nobody can come and say, no, this is not what Moshe meant, even if they do miracles. Because their prophecy will certainly be called into question. Because you can't contradict Moshe at all. Because remember, Moshe gets his power from God. And all other prophets are on a much lower level, because when God spoke to them, he came to them in a vision. They lost all sense of faculties. They couldn't speak to God when they wanted to. God came to them when he felt there was a certain message he wanted to give. And if you're a prophet, just as a side point, God gives you a message in the form of a riddle or whatever it is, you have to give it over. And you have to get it right. And if you don't get it right, you're liable for a death penalty. So it's kind of dangerous to be a prophet. I'll just give one example. If you look at Yosef has a dream. Dreams are a form of prophecy for kings, certainly, and for important people that God wants to get a message out. Today, dreams don't really mean anything, and the reason they don't mean anything is because most dreams are meaningless. It's a manifestation of our thoughts during the day or previous days or whatever it is. The only people that have prophecy today, since it doesn't exist, the only people that have prophecies today are little children or idiots. So you're going to say, well, at least you see some people do have prophecy. No. When we say little children or idiots, it means nobody has prophecy today. The lowest form of prophecy, today you might have great tzaddikim, great righteous people in this generation that are given certain knowledge that they shouldn't have. Right, that they really shouldn't have, but God gives it to them. So it's a form of prophecy, what we call divine inspiration, or what we call Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is the lowest form of prophecy. Be that as it may, in my intro to Kabbalah class, in Derech Hashem, in the way of God, the Ramchal speaks about prophecy, and he speaks about divine inspiration. So one day we're going to get there. We'll speak it out. We'll flush it out what it means. So Yosef, just as an example, I don't want to get carried away here. Yosef has a dream, and his dream is significant. And he had to give over the dream to his brothers, even though it was going to cause them to hate him more. And the reason he had to give it over because he understood it was a form of prophecy. So even if it's dangerous, he had to give it over. If it put his life in danger. Same thing, if you read the book of Jonah, God comes to him. God comes to Jonah and says, go to Nineveh, the great city, and tell them I'm going to wipe them out. They don't do tshuva. Jonah doesn't want to go. He flees he goes outside the land of Israel, where it's brought down that people don't have prophecy outside the land of Israel. So, God can't demand much more of him if he's outside the land, whatever's going on there. He tries to flee. God comes to him again and says, go to the big city, and go to Nineveh, this is what I want you to do, tell them, etc. And Jonah doesn't want to go. Jonah gets punished, right, swallowed up by a fish and all this. Why doesn't Jonah want to go? Jonah doesn't want to go because if the non-Jews repent and do tshuva, then what's going to happen is it's going to make the Jews look really bad. And because it's going to make the Jews look really bad, why allow them to do tshuva if the Jews don't do tshuva? Right? So whether it's a good explanation for himself or not, that was what he thought. God came to him, and he ended up going there, telling them, if you don't repent, you don't do tshuva, then I'm going to wipe you out. They do tshuva, etc. So see over there the book of Jonah. So in any way, prophecy can come in a number of different ways. Come in a vision, come in a dream. Right? There are certain dreams a person may have that, let's say somebody, family member, comes to them in a dream and tells them X, Y, or Z. Tell them, I owed money to somebody, you have to go pay them. Tell them exactly who the person is, how much they owed, because they're suffering in the next world. There are any number of reasons why a person could have a dream, from a family member or whatever, that could be significant. So then you have to speak to your local Orthodox rabbi if you have such a dream. But most dreams today are totally meaningless. The Talmud goes into detail certain things that are that if a person sees in a dream, whether they're good, whether they're bad. But again, unless it really, really bothers you, then just let it go. It doesn't, 99% of the time, it's totally meaningless. So it's not something we should worry about unless, let's say, a person was a king, and then God had to give certain information to the king to get whatever God needed out of him and out of his people and everything else. So that's just a short idea about prophecy and a little bit how it works. So why do I bring this up? Because Moshe is God's trusted servant. Nonetheless, people complain. There's even such a complaint, they say, maybe Moshe's a womanizer. Right? They accuse them of a number of things where, Jewish people, difficult people to deal with. Imagine they're all, in the desert and it's hot. And even though God's providing for all their needs, it's, God's working, flexing their belief in Him muscles, meaning their emunah muscles. Nonetheless, it's, then even though everything's taken care of, all their needs are taken care of, it's still a difficult thing that they have to go through. So Moshe does not do anything on his own. He doesn't act on his own. He does what God tells him to do. Now, everybody knows that, seemingly. So if that's true, and he can't add or subtract to anything that God says, then why does Korah go against him? I mean, after all, maybe you'll say it looks kind of funny that Moshe's in charge of the Jewish people, by choice, not they just took over power. But the fact that Moshe's in charge of the Jewish people looks a little bit funny, maybe, on the outside, that he gives the high priest of the next, most important position, he gives to his brother. Now, if you look at Aaron, a lot of the miracles that happen in Egypt go through Moshe. Moshe comes to Aaron after he sees God, the burning bush, and tells Aaron all the things that God told him, etc. And Aaron could have totally been jealous of Moshe. Moshe's his younger brother, and all these things are happening through him. Aaron's no slouch. Certainly no slouch. The people, when he dies, they mourn for him for 30 days. Everyone's very sad because he brought peace. He brought a lot of peace among the Jewish people. Anytime, two people are arguing, he would go to one side and say, oh, you don't understand, Reuven, your friend Shimon, is so sad and so apologetic, and he really feels bad about what's happened, and he really wants to be your friend, he wants to speak to you. It's really, he really tries to convince him, how bad the other side feels. And then he goes to the other side to Shimon. He says, Shimon, you have to understand, Reuven feels so bad. He told me how bad he feels, and he wants to try and make up and still be friends. And he's really beside himself, and he can't live anymore, and he can't function. And so what happens when Reuven and Shimon meet? They come and they hug each other because of everything Aaron says. They say but Aaron didn't necessarily tell the truth. Right? Maybe what's deep in their heart, that's what they wanted, but Aaron went around making peace making people feel good about the other person. He was very good at it. So Aaron was totally happy with with the fact that God spoke to Moshe and what Moshe told him, and he wasn't jealous whatsoever. Of course he wasn't jealous. Look what Moshe gave to him. He was on top. He was the high priest. So things are good. Okay, so I don't have to be the king. So what? Let Moshe be the king. Let him deal with all the people, all the stiff-necked people of the Jewish people. I'll be in charge of making sacrifices, of giving sacrifices, teaching Torah. Moshe has his role, I have my role. Didn't bother him whatsoever. Right? He was very much at home with it. No jealousy. So Korah, who was so great himself, how did he get caught up on all this? Because remember, at the beginning of the parsha, it says he separated himself. Not just himself, he separated others also. That's what machlokes is. That's what disagreement is. You're on one side, he's on the the other person's on the other, but you have people with you, and the other person has people with you, and that's how a machlokes, a disagreement, can spiral and have all kinds of negative effects. So the Mishnah, Pirkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers, tells us that kavod, honor, kina, jealousy can take us out of this world. Now, some of the commentaries say that's literal. In other words, the person's jealous of someone else. This jealousy could really burn inside him, and therefore it could actually kill him. Meaning, he could be taken out of this world because of what jealousy could do. Others say it doesn't mean he's taken out of this world per se. What it means is he's taken out of the next world. He loses a portion of the world to come. And that's pretty severe. So, if we break it down, where does jealousy really come from? Jealousy comes from the fact that someone has something that you don't. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be materialistic. Doesn't mean a person's jealous of someone else's big house or fancy car. Could be. But jealousy could be that a person is, jealous of his friend's intelligence, and his friend's position, his friend's wife, their kid, whatever. Whatever it is, the question is, how does it affect you? Is it all consuming? Or do you say, okay, he's got this, I have this, and you move on? See, when jealousy enters the heart, or probably one of the worst character traits a person can have. When jealousy enters the heart, what it does is it makes you not satisfied with what you have. So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, another Mishnah in Ethics of Our Father, says, who's the truly happy person? The one who's sameach bechelko. He's happy with what he has. Now that means he's not desiring what someone else has. Whatever God gives him, whatever he works for, even if God doesn't give him what he thinks he deserves, he's happy with what he has. He's not looking into what someone else has. And in this generation, it's very hard not to see what other people have. Some people have fancier houses, fancier cars, the kids go to camp, they do this, they go on vacation. They go on, midwinter vacation, go on summer vacation. Someone's not going to be jealous of that. So the question is how you look at it. Because someone has X, Y, or Z, why do we feel that we need it? Why does our society say, no, it's, a person lives in a consumer society, and he's getting these flashes of images of all the time. Buy, go here, do this. And we get sucked into it. But what happens if you can't? What happens if your funds are limited, which is most people? But your friend has it, or his kid has it, or whatever. What does that do to a person? It makes them feel inadequate. Why does he have it and we don't? Well, if it's something materialistic, then you can say, well, they're doing, they can afford it, we can't afford it. But the thing is that if that's true and a person, struggles, he's got to the best of his ability, has to make his kids somehow not feel it, which is much easier said than done. Obviously, if you can't buy it, you can't buy it. Doesn't mean that whatever your kid wants, you buy for them. But see, for kids, it's very easy. Right? It's very easy to feel jealous one of the others. Someone's got this type of bag, or this type of shoes, or, and you don't. So if you hang around people that are pretty much in the same situation, okay, so everyone's struggling, some more, some less, but you're all in the same, you're all in the same box, so to speak. But if you see people that much more, and it's harder, right? It's harder for it's harder for a child, in that sense. Now, someone who understands how the world works. So, God's given more to one person, He's given less to someone else. How do we view that? Say if I'm really, truly happy with what I have, okay? Then whatever someone else has, okay, so let them have it. It doesn't necessarily make them better. Right? Certainly not going to make them better, especially if it's materialistic things. So here's a whole totally different thing, though. Here, Korach understood who Moshe Rabbeinu was. Korach understood who Aaron a Kohen was. So if he understood who they were, what's he complaining about? We could understand someone's been working for a long time for a certain company, someone surpasses him and gets a promotion that you think you deserve. Could be it's totally legit, your feelings and everything else. But you didn't get the promotion. You didn't get the raise you thought you deserved. Now, if you tell me this other person, it was like a bribe, or bribed the boss, or whatever the case is, and he got it when you really deserved it, okay, a person could be upset by that. But then we have to remember one major thing, and this is something a lot of times we forget. Whatever happens to us, God's pulling the strings. We have free will. We have free will to go in one direction or go in another direction. That's true. But even if that's the case, God's still pulling the strings. So if I have anyone to blame, or if a person has anyone to blame, why this didn't happen or that didn't happen, is because God didn't want you to have it. You may think it's better. You may think you deserve it. But obviously, God doesn't think so, or may think that it's going to have a negative effect, so He doesn't give it to you. So sometimes we have the ability to see such things. Other times we don't. So it's kind of like a person hits a dog with a stick. Who does the dog go after? The stick. But who should the dog go after? The person. So if we have any complaints about what's going on in our lives, obviously we have things we need to fix up, that's for sure. But if we have if we have any questions, that's God's department. He's the one pulling the strings. So Korach doesn't go to God and say, hey, it's not fair. Why'd you do this? He's like poking fun. He's poking fun at Aaron. He's taking pot shots, my language. But he's not getting to what the essence of it is, and that is that God's calling the shots. Right? Did he not forget God runs the world? Maybe he forgot. Did he forget all the miracles that happened in Egypt? Did he forget all the miracles in the desert? The commentaries say, as the Talmud brings down, how could Korah do something so stupid? He's much more intelligent than that. He's a great individual. Not only that, he convinced 250 people of great renown as well. The earth swallows them up. As the Talmud says, as they're going down to Gehenna, to hell, they say, Moshe emes v'toraso emes. They realize they made a mistake. It's being swallowed up. They say Moshe is true, and God's Torah is true. So they understood after the fact they made a mistake, so in the next world, he'll have a portion of the world to come. He didn't lose his portion of the world to come because as he's going down, he did tshuva. He repented, but it wasn't enough to save him. But, again, we can't look at these stories at face value. And the reason is because you have great individuals. The people coming in the desert was the greatest generation in the history of man. They saw God face to face, right? Whether you hold that they heard God speak the first two of the Ten Commandments, then died, God brought them back to life, or that they heard all of the Ten Commandments, whatever the case is, they're great individuals. So you could say, well, even great people have flaws. Right? Even the greatest people have flaws. The Torah does not say the greatest people, the Jewish people, are perfect. Right? Seemingly they have flaws. They may be minor in some way, some obviously greater. But even small flaws for considering who they were is considered a serious manifestation. It's going to come out to bite them in some way. Meaning that a person, if he's closest to the king, a minor infraction could get him banished to Siberia. Could have all kinds of things happen against him. We're not interested in that. But there are repercussions. So, this is pretty severe though. Not only does it go against Moshe and Aaron, but he's charismatic and he takes all these people with him. That's the power of machlokes, of disagreements. You get so caught up in it, it's like you lose your mind. You lose your sense of what's right because I'm just going to bury this guy. He doesn't deserve what he has, and you're going to get so caught up, you're going to do something. You're absolutely going to do something that you regret. So a person always has to be, regardless of what happens, always have to be in control. Because if you lose control, then it could be catastrophic. In this case, it eats at him. The fact that, he's not the high priest. Why? He deserves it. He'll give any number of reasons in order to justify that he deserves it. Now, obviously, if God doesn't think so he's wrong. But, what does it do? It just eats away at him. It consumes him. And it consumed him so much, he brought other people in. And he said, makes a lot of sense. And they rallied around Korah, and Moshe begged him to do tshuva. And he seemed that Korah made fun of him. Made fun of him and Aaron. And the end result is, Moshe was right, Korach was wrong, and him and these 250 people and all their property got sucked up by the earth. Right? That's pretty bad. That's definitely pretty bad. So, one thing certainly Korach didn't understand is that you need to be humble. The way, another thing is that you may think you know better, but obviously, if we believe in this book and the Torah itself, and it's manufactured by God himself, then obviously God knows what's best for us or not. Says the Ramchal, Rabbi Chaim Coffman brings down in Derech Hashem, in the way of God, that God set up the world in a certain way, with checks and balances. What are the checks and balances? We know them to be mitzvahs, positive and negative commands. Even a non-Jew has what to do in this world. Right? Whatever the Noahide laws are that he has to keep. So God set up the world in a way that these things whether it's a positive command or staying away from, things that are negative, right? These negative commands, they are going to build you into the great person that you can be. Now you're going to say, how do I know that? How do I know if I take a lulav and I say, oh, Shana, right? You take your lulav and you shake it to the right, shake it behind you, shake it to the side, shake it up, you shake it down. You're showing God's dominion all over the entire world, right? The world above, the world below. You say, I'm shaking a lulav. I'm getting rid of, bad symbols and bad signs, and I'm also showing God's dominion. Now, obviously, if we understood Kabbalah, it has a lot more meaning than that. That's the basic idea. So when a person's in synagogue, we get the shaking down again. You shake it up, to the side, to the back, to the side. You shake it up, you shake it down. So there's a lot more going on that we should really understand. But at a simple level, that's what we're declaring. So you might say, I'm taking this lulav, right? I'm taking these palm fronds, right? One hand. I got my esrog in the other hand, right? My lemon on steroids. I got my hadassim, my myrtle leaves in my willows. And I'm going, oh, Shana, and I'm shaking it. Say, wow, look what I'm doing for the spiritual worlds. Okay, this is a command. This is what we have to do. Right? On Sukkot, obviously. You do it during the rest of the year, doesn't mean anything. On Sukkot, that's much more significance. So the Ramchal says, God set it up in such a way that if you do these things and stay away from these other negative things, that's going to help you reach potential. That's going to build and strengthen your spiritual soul, even though you're stuck in the physical world. So people say, well, if I don't really understand it, why should I keep it? If I understand it better, I will. So that basically means that it's an excuse not to do anything. Well, I don't understand prayer so much. I don't understand this so much. Judaism is about doing. Whether you understand it 100% or not is irrelevant. God says, I want you to do it. Why? Because he manufactured a book. Right? The book he manufactured is the Torah. If he manufactured the book and said, this is good for you, and this is going to be beneficial for your soul, who are you? Who are you to say, I think I know better? So for argument's sake, if the Jewish people have been keeping the Torah for the last 3,500 years, and it's kept the Jewish people together, staved off intermarriage, assimilation, and everything else, we're doing it to ourselves, not according to the Torah. But if we keep the Torah, the more we're attached to it, the more Judaism works. The more Judaism can be passed down. That's proven. Right? The other so-called movements, pretenders to the throne, my language, 60-70% intermarriage rate. They'll use a Hebrew name 4 times in their life, when they're born, when they're bar mitzvahed, when they get married, and when they die. You think they got a prayer without, no pun intended, you think they got a prayer passing that down to the next generation? I don't think so. It's not about philosophy. It doesn't work. Right? They always say a mule's a great animal. A hybrid between a donkey and a horse. Well, guess what? It's sterile. Can't reproduce. So this is an amazing thing. God says, I got this book. I'm going to tell you what to do. Pass it down to Moshe. Moshe gave it to us. This is the same book that we have. So that being true, this is to my benefit, the Ramchal says. That's how God set it up. He gave me, He gave us an evil inclination. So we have to work very hard in the physical world to draw out our spiritual potential. But you can't draw out spiritual potential if you don't tap into it. You can say, really? You say, here's my lulav, right? You're shaking your lulav. Really? This is my spiritual potential? I don't know. God said to do it. I would venture to say, and this may be a leap of faith, if God wrote a book, manufactured it himself, passed it down and said, this is going to benefit you, I'm going to ask if it's a good thing. I mean, yeah, Jews would, because they're chutzpahdik, but you got to ask if it's a good thing? Like, can I smoke? No, you can't smoke. All right, no, I'm not interested. Can I eat shrimp? No, sorry. Oh, if you're a Noahide, you can eat shrimp. You can't eat shrimp. You're a Jew. Right? The Torah's going to say you can't do it. It's to my benefit, but I don't understand what that means. God says, You don't have to understand it, Kabbalistically. I thought it was a good thing. Don't mix milk and meat. Don't do it. Why not? Because I said so. That's not enough? You think you know better? You're going to make Torah in your image? And not the way God set it out? Okay, go do it. What's the result? We know what the result is. So Korach says, I know better. And he brings different examples to try and, make fun of Moshe and Aaron. He says we're all holy. So why do you have to be better than us? The Torah says, as Korach brings out, there's a mitzvah of tzitzis. Right, of wearing those fringes. Right, a four-corner garment. But there's one fringe that has to be blue. You dye it blue. It's called tchelis. So Korach says, if all these strings are going to be kosher for tzitzis, so what happens if I have all blue strings? That's going to, that's going to nullify it? If we're all holy, why do we need you to rule over us? But the reality is, that's a stupid argument. Because he's right to a certain extent. If we're all holy, then guess what? We don't need leaders. But God put them in charge. How could you have forgotten that? You think Moshe came by himself and said, okay, I'm in charge. Moshe came in the name of God and said, this is what he told me to do. He gave me some tricks to show you, the stick trick, right? Took a stick down, turned it into a snake, grabbed the snake, and turned back to a stick. Moshe says, the people aren't going to believe me. God says, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So they all agree. There's no one disagrees over here. No one thinks Moshe usurped power. If Korach would have said that, they would have stoned him to death right there. Gonzo. Doesn't say that. So Korach said, oh Moshe, I got these tzitzis. It's all blue. You want to tell me it nullifies the whole mitzvah of tzitzis? He's like, Moshe, what are you, a moron? You don't know this? Everybody's holy. What gives you the right? What gives you the right to give it to Aaron? I deserve it. You took power. See, if I would have been Moshe, I would have said, are you out of your cotton picking head? I took power? We just went through, rewind the video. How did Moshe get to be a prophet? What's his stamp of approval to be a prophet for the entire Jewish people and the greatest prophet in the history of man? Let's remember, God told him in the entire world. So you want to blame anybody? Blame God. That's what Moshe should have said. If I were him. I would have said, you got anyone to blame? He's the one to blame. I'm not doing anything against anybody's will. I'm doing what God told me to do. That's it. And you want to come to me? You want to come to me and say, oh, look, you're doing this and you're doing that. And look at Aaron and his protexia. You're giving all the honor to your brother. Look what Yaakov says. Draw a parallel. Well, what Yaakov says to Lavan. Yaakov works for 20 years after Lavan, runs after him when Yaakov leaves and seemingly takes his entire fortune with him. And Lavan says, what are you doing? These are my kids. This is my property. This is all this. And Yaakov's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, these might be your daughters. They're not my children. I didn't work for all this. Did I ever lie to you? Did I ever not show up to work when it was hot, when it was cold? Did any of your cattle ever get lost? Any of your sheep go astray? And he lashes out at him. Totally lashes out, and he deserved it. So again, in my language, what are you kidding me? Are you off your cotton picking head after everything I've done? This is what you say? Yeah, we know who Lavan is. We understand where he's coming from. He's a loser. He's a Ramai. He tricks people. Not interested in truth. So he makes his son-in-law's life an absolute misery. And he kept changing his mind and changing his, his wages and what he was going to give him and this and that. Yaakov says, enough! And he left. Right? He saw that his face wasn't the same towards him. Tells his daughter, let's go. And he packs up and he leaves. Or he says, Lavan, what do you want? I did anything against your will? I stole from you? I did all these things you're accusing me of. I didn't do anything. And he called him out on it. What does Moshe say? Do tshuva. You're making a big mistake. Again, we would have thrown the book at him. What is it? You're absolutely crazy, but he was very charismatic. He had big people behind him, which boggles the mind. How he was able to convince them. But see, that's what machlokes is. That's what it means to be so decisive, because you take other people with you. You make it much stronger, then it gets all diluted, because then you don't forget what you're fighting about. But the jealousy kills you. Because he thought he deserved the priesthood, he lost all sense of reality. So again, we're going to break it down just a drop here. How could that happen? It doesn't make any sense. So one possible way of looking at it is by saying the following. If you see miracles, and you reach high spiritual levels, etc., and you learn, but it doesn't become part of your life, you learn like mental gymnastics, but it doesn't do anything for you. In other words, it doesn't make you change. You're just stuck on your own ego and say, yeah, I want to be this big fish in a small pond instead of reaching my potential. So what am I doing essentially? I'm wasting myself, which, God should have mercy on someone who does that. Because if you stunt your own growth, despite the fact that you think you're helping others in a way that's spiritually unhealthy and, could potentially kill you in the process in a number of ways, obviously it's not good. Obviously you're going to have to answer for that. And I've heard people say that, yeah, I feel like I'm doing the best, and I'll grow however I grow, and, it's like a crapshoot. We'll see what happens. But if you know something doesn't work, but you're staying there because people look up to you, people pat you on the back, people say good job, makes you feel good. That's true. Because if you go somewhere else, you look like it has nothing. Because you don't have the knowledge that these other people have. They have to start from the bottom. I should know. It happened to me. But see, starting at the bottom in a certain way was good, because then I had to crawl up and keep going and going and going. But see, what did that do? Made me who I am. Made me grow. Made me fight more. Because it was harder. I could have taken the easy way out. No question. If I would have taken the easy way out, I wouldn't be who I am today. So, Korach did not envelop the message. He saw the miracles. He understood what was going on. He didn't put it into his heart. Because he didn't put it into his heart, it didn't mean anything. It's like mental gymnastics. In other words, he saw it, he understood it, but it didn't affect him. So that's bad. So in our own lives, if we learn, we learn some more, and we do what we're supposed to do, we shouldn't think we're so great, because that's what we're created to do. That's what God wants from us. Right? You're not allowed to have a big ego because of that. But see, whatever level we're holding, there are always levels to grow. So you can never be complacent. As I heard someone say, I'm very happy where I am. That's bad. That's like saying, I'm happy being mediocre. So I ask you, after 120 years, you come upstairs and God says, did you learn? Did you do this? Did you do that? I said, I was happy being mediocre. I hope God has mercy. Going for a job interview, you said, yeah, I just want to be mediocre. I'm looking to do a great job. I'll do a halfway decent job. That's it. You won't get another interview. And this world is the world we live in. Whatever we do in this world, that's what we're going to get judged on later. So whatever we do, whatever we learn, we have to make it part of us. We have to try and grow with it and take it and not just say, oh, what a great thing, and I saw a miracle, or I grew spiritually and I kept growing and learning and doing other things, but it didn't affect my life. No. If it doesn't affect your life, it's mental gymnastics. If it's mental gymnastics, that's not Torah. Because the purpose of Torah is to change you. All the more so if you saw all the miracles and it didn't affect you. Then you say, oh, look what Moshe is doing. It doesn't make any sense. Don't you know God told him to do it? Don't you know all these things? How could Korah could have forgotten? Because his ego got in the way. His jealousy got in the way. And when your ego and jealousy get in the way, you have no hope. Right? It's almost an impossibility. So that's one thing we should pray for on a daily basis. A, we don't get involved in these type of things. And we don't think we're so great and that we deserve X, Y, or Z. Whatever God wants to give us, that's what He'll give us. And if He doesn't want us to have it, we won't have it. But the one thing we have to learn how to be sameach b'chelko, to be happy with what we have, even if we think we deserve more. So I want to remind people that I give this class once a week, Tuesday nights, Intro to Kabbalah, based on the book Derech Hashem, speak about prophecy, purpose of man, evil inclination versus good inclination, reincarnation, all these different topics. Anyone's interested. I also give conversion classes and no-hide classes. Take a look at my Facebook page at beyondorthodoxconversion.com or my blog at orthodoxconversion.com. As well, anyone wants to contact me can send me an email at rabbichaimcoffman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIAIM COFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a great Shabbos.